TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for, what are we at, the 15th now? Peace in our time has been achieved. Of course, that's what everyone's saying. Corresponds to the orange dip. We had the short term buyer crossover here of steel from before. Once we were back over the 76%, it was just a question of, how much sustainability was there. And that was exactly when the magenta had popped up over yellow. You still had shorts thinking that, oh my God, it's Armageddon. So they rode the short cover rally. And that's pretty much happening right at this minute. Uh, yeah, it's all going to be relative to what oil prices do. The damage is still done. So that still has to be weeded through economically. But it's certainly going to have a huge impact if all of a sudden people have gotten accustomed to the higher spending and all of a sudden things get cheaper. Well, that'll be a huge relief. And that will be end of year kind of bonus, effectively. It's going to take some time for the ripple effect. The big issue is going to still be food and how they mitigate that one. And I know they're talking about it. Trump was on the farm bill and maybe subsidizing farmers because you got to mitigate that gap where fertilizers and that just through the roof and that whole breakdown of the supply chain from this whole uh, debacle, which is now supposedly successful because we accomplished something. So, from a 50K standpoint, you can say it was pretty much just sideways. And I think this was just a question of building up position, thinking that, okay, is this actually going to work out over the weekend? And sure enough, it did. So that's the current spike breaking out of the range. And that becomes a critical one from there. Intraday, there was still a lot of activity. And this, to me, is more relevant than anything because you still see that even within the broader upside of things, you just see it, end of day, oh, final ticker number. It's like, oh, this huge move. But there was plenty of up and down. And that's exactly what you look for from a nice move. And then market open gap is huge. It was already leading towards that as we came towards the end of the day. You were almost right at the highs. And then there's just gaps up to do it. Of course, all positive extremes. So retraces and likely, any little hiccup that will fill back in. And, it's sort of like you're buying the rumor effectively. And the rumor being is that this memorandum of understanding is going to produce something down the road, which who knows if that's actually going to be the case. Crypto, Bitcoin, these are all the same bicycle. So orange under green, green over red. Yeah, you've got steel over 13, but as soon as it dips back below, you're going to have a little bit of a pullback. We'll see the same thing here from gold standpoint. And with things being settled, you'll see some rotation into gold now because, oh, okay, where are you going to go? There's no more real excitement in the market valuation threshold. Now it's like, okay, are we going to see those inflationary interest rates, all those things start to climb dramatically? This was a huge relief for the euro because their spending for oil and that was not sustainable. They were going to be underwater. I don't think this helps their economy any, which is very interesting. But they consider that the U.S. is still going to be in massive deficit spending, and that's going to have the big catalyst. So we move over here to oil, and fine, bit of a respite. Okay, you're back at the 80 level. We'll see me when we get to the 50s. Otherwise, it's a big help because you'll start to see reductions at the pump. But that isn't going to change some of the. It's just displacement of supply that's got to be refilled. There's going to have to be a larger than normal amount of purchase simply because of the strategic reserves from every country that's going to have to be refilled. How that gets done and relatively how even that is, we'll see. So, and whether or not we see, shifts in Japan, I think becomes a primary focus. A lot of people kind of ignored that one, but Japan raising interest rates would change things a lot, simply because the carry trade has always been zero rates in Japan. So you just go ahead and borrow money and buy U.S. Treasuries, so float. If you don't need to do that, then what happens to U.S. Treasuries? Does the yield have to rise because demand drops? Yeah, we're going to find out those things. So from an NQ viewpoint, you can see it right there. All of the classic moves from a DOC standpoint, as well as from an MDI reading. So all worked out well. Never thought it was a gloom and doom situation. It was just a question of were certain catalysts going to go through, and this was always the outlier surprise. And I don't even know that it's a surprise that much. It's just a question of whether it fulfills itself to reality and where you go from there. I think everyone was a little bit relieved on the SpaceX IPO situation, so that didn't create a drag in any way, and that means that the others for OpenAI, Anthropic, others can potentially be successful as well. So that's the long and the short of it for now. As always, anything relevant, I'll put on the team chat. Have a good one. Trade well.